Okay, here we go. Shalom, salama, greetings, everyone. Thank you for coming on here to Q2A discussions. Q2A discussions, and on this Q2A discussions, we are talking about economic warfare. Sorry, family. Give me just a second here. Because this economic warfare is what we are getting ready to see expand very rapidly over these next couple of now it looks like it's going to be days, not even weeks, because we just had something go on um, last week or a couple days ago, and then we recently had something happening. Um, I would say mm, a couple of hours ago, and I'm going to get into these articles. You all can bear with me. Sorry, sorry, family. It's doing some things here in the background, and here we go. All right. So yes, with this economic warfare, it all links back to China. I think most can agree that it does. It has. And what China, excuse me, Africa. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, family. It all links back to Africa. It all links back to what is happening, really, not just in the Sahel, but also what's happening across the continent. And what happens across the continent will have a direct impact of what happens across the world. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. What happens on the continent directly impacts what happens around the world. So when I say, look, the rise of Africa, the continent, the diaspora, and BRICS, get your copy now. We tend to have to say those things because understand that we are in a economic war. And I know that people just think, oh, business as usual, no big deal. It's this, it's that. I wish that it would be that simple. And the reality is that it is not that simple. The reality is that with what we see going on, it is even defying literally all, not just common sense, but it is defying everything that was of good decency and order, because things are happening that's literally showing that yes, this economic warfare is now becoming more and more overt than covert. And there's some articles here that I can only find really on X that will begin to provide that context. So let me begin here. I'm going to share this. And yes, family, I'm over here in my comfort. This is my comfort zone. But this is from Citizen Observer. One of the biggest tomato processing factories in Burkina Faso is now in Burkina Faso, just 2 years after Ibrahim Traore, a pro-Russian leader, took over the country or the leadership of the country. It's showing the fields because these are the farming equipment that had been delivered. This is the tomato factory that they're processing the tomatoes. And this is the canned tomatoes, canned goods, which means that there is an economic vitality. So from the field to the factory that's being manned, look, there's not any type of AI there. There's manual work that's there to then have a finished product. Um, you're literally seeing the process of economic warfare. Did I show you this? Are you getting this? The field is then now being worked by the owners, the people of the continent, of the land, and it is then being processed as a finished good to do what? To distribute. I know that this is hard for some folks to understand. Usually it starts here. Here are all the tomatoes. That's usually where it starts. It's right up right here. These are all the tomatoes. And look at that. Look at that crop. That's crazy. See, things like this, we don't we always ask, is this thing AI? Is this thing, Is this even real? Because we can't truly understand how fertile that land is. And I would argue, yes, that is real. Having been to places on the continent, yes, that is real. Wow, those tomatoes look very robust. What do they have in the soil? Obviously something that's non-GMO. Obviously something that is providing the health and the nutrients, so then the people will begin to be healthy, and then as there's more folks to work the ground, then there'll be more factories like this, and then there'll be more cans and goods and services, because those there's going to need to be trucks that's going to need to be able to refrigerate. There's going to be trucks that's going to be able to get to the factories. There's going to be more factories created because you can program more monies, more funds. Understand that is economic warfare, because the moment that this let me get back to this. The moment that this is supposed to be hauled off in a refrigerated shipping container to go to a port in Europe to be processed at a facility in Europe, and then to be distributed through a finished product, either tomato paste, tomato parts, pieces, halved, whole. This here is not supposed to turn into that there. That is creating the jobs. And if you have jobs, that promotes wealth. And if you have wealth, then guess what? What then is the need for folks to run over to Europe? What is in the need? Africa has a migrant crisis, or Europe has an African migrant crisis. Why? Because this has not been done. That's it. This has not been done. See, we all tend to think that it's just about, minerals and minerals doing this and minerals doing that. And let me tell you this, the simplest thing that comes from out of the earth is produce. And when you're doing it right and you're doing it biblically speaking, that seventh year, this land gets a rest. So now think about what you have here. If you now have this field this year, then guess what? You're developing another field next year, and then you're developing another field the next year, and then you're developing another field the next year. So then you have six fields. And then at that seventh year, that field is taking a rest. That field is taking a rest. That field is taking a rest. So then, as one field rests, the other field is planted. As one field rests, the other field is planted. These are biblical truths. To do what? To heal and to rest the land. So therefore, you get more of this. More of this right here. This is what's happening. And don't underestimate our brothers and sisters on out there. Let me tell you, we came under both the wood and the stone. And don't think that they aren't realizing who they are. They know who they are. But you also have to understand, because they know who they are, that is why they're fighting all of these jihadis and these terrorists and things of that nature. And yes, they are going to get the treatment. Here's this. All right, so let me kind of show you this right here. These are all supply trucks. You have supply cargo trucks, and they can double both as supply and both cargo. And then you also have tankers. And tankers can be for fuel and water. Lutte contre le terrorisme. Terrorism. Lutte contre le terrorisme. That just roughly means the fight against terrorism. Contre, against. De nouveaux engins logistiques et de combat remis à l'armée. New logistics engines are trucks. And combat equipment for the army. And yes, this is Burkina Faso. And this isn't just happening in Burkina Faso, this is also happening in the Sahel. Because what do you have to do when you are a country that is breaking out against the West? This is what this is. This is economic warfare. Do not get this twisted. The West does not want to see their prosperity because if they are prosperous, then that means that they will not there's someone else that will not be prosperous. These are the trucks. I believe that this was provided by China. These are also some Humvees and armored personnel carriers. They like to give the full display. From MRAPs, up armored tactical vehicles, and those are tankers for water, fuel, and other liquid substances. You can do a lot. And it's also for morale because a strong country provides a strong economy. And then that strong economy, it reciprocates. And I'm going to say this good for them. Because let me tell you, even when I was there and their attempts for, armed, having guards, over the course of what is happening, they are exponentially increasing. And this is why the West is afraid because the West sees what is happening in Burkina Faso. And that is not just happening in Burkina Faso, that's also in Niger, Mali. This is what you had with Chad. This is what's going on with Guinea. This is why you see things going on and occurring with the Ivory Coast. This is why they're scared about Senegal. And the coastal countries that are now realizing that they probably have a better economic, vibrance. Because let me tell you, the more that you are able to provide for your people, the more your people will actually respect the government. Servitude. Let me show you what servitude in action looks like. This is it. No, I'm not sure about the hydro dam. Even when I was there, they were talking about it. A lot of the things you have to understand, they're still producing wealth, and they're still trying to not just produce wealth. They're trying to recontrol their wealth because it is a tightrope that they are still dancing with the CFR. Nobody wants to leave, you know, billions of dollars on the table. And look, as sad as it is, you know, it's kind of like you're getting up out of that situation, but you kind of have to continue to pay so you don't have any other issues. I know a lot of our folks are like, "Oh, just cut the ties." I get it, but when you are doing things in a diplomatic effort and when you are doing things on the tightrope, I'm going to tell you this: you cannot necessarily fight wars and grow your economy. So you have to do things very, very prudently. And we have to respect that they're doing this thing very prudently because I haven't heard any country being placed on any type of economic watch list, terrorism, all the good stuff that they always want to accuse. This is why they have really what they're having because, yeah, they may get played and down as, this is just a military dictatorship in disguise, all the things that we get. We know how that works. If y'all heard Brother Yakoba yesterday, look, self-determination. This is self-determination right here. Agricultural. These are your farmers. And imagine you have the farmers having machines and equipment that would do what? Provide for more agricultural wealth and resources. Because when you're able to provide those wealth and resources, sorry, family, I got to scroll down because a lot of these captions, obviously, for Burkina Faso, um, they are uh, in other languages. But what I want to show, there was something here. It was very poignant. They're saying it shows that this is a show something of the end of the exploitation of gold and the expulsion. So someone Caucus show yeah, Caucus some things. They're getting more armaments, more vehicles, and they're showing that. That's the one I wanted. Here we go. Burkina Faso towards restorative justice. The country favors mediation before legal proceedings. The Burkina Faso government has taken a major step in the development of its judicial system by adopting. And, that was probably translated from French. What does that mean? Look, when you actually are able to have self determination, you're actually able to have justice. Because why was the justice administered, and who was it administered for and to work against? It was administered for the West to work against the Burkinabe. And when you have fairness and equality, and your legal systems aren't there as a literal just trap, then guess what ends up happening? You begin to have fair rulership. Because when the wicked are in power, what? The people mourn. When the righteous are in power, the people are they celebrate. In the caption, the Burkinabe government towards restorative justice. Quite a different world we live in than the one 5 years ago, I would argue. Quite a different world. Because that is showing and telling of the other African nations, hey, this is what rulership looks like. And this is what happens when you decide to throw off the shackles of injustice to do what? To participate in a free market that values your people. So let me tell you this.
Спешу сообщить вам,
I'm going to put this out in
так,
here.
господа, спешу сообщить.
It says here, this is from a Che Biles. A Norwegian ship refused to accept survivors from sinking Russian cargo ship Ursa Major. The lifeboat headed towards a Norwegian Oslo Carrier 3, which was nearby when the lifeboat approached the side. The vessel refused to accept the Ursa Major crew, citing some kind of ban. In maritime law, admiralty law, it is actually admiralty law that you are, as a seafarer, are supposed to provide assistance to those that are at sea. Well, I'm going to tell you this. When you talk about lawlessness, that's lawlessness. That you don't even want to then follow your own law. That's the vessel right there. And then there are some lifeboats. That's a lifeboat. That's what it looks like. There are other vessels in the area. And they're refusing to aid and assist. Now, a couple of months ago, I did a little um, boater safety guide. And it was a refresher course. I used to have a little boater safety certificate years ago when I used to rent boats. I liked being on the water with jet skis and things of that nature. So there's rules of the waterways from a jet ski even to a major shipping vessel. And let me tell you, Russia's fleet is under attack. You can go through here, you can see all the videos. And now here is the latest one. I want to share this with you. This is the latest and greatest. I think some of these are definitely no. This one is this one. It looks like it's legit. Says here in this photo, Finnish authorities seized a ship carrying Russian oil in the Baltic Sea on suspicion it caused the outage of a undersea power cable connecting Finland and Estonia that it also damaged or broke four internet lines. Okay. That's the that's their story, right? Hey, it was carrying Russian oil and it was also cutting internet lines. And that's why you have to understand they're telling you this is economic warfare. Now, the thing about this is understand if this is happening to the Russians and they're showing it happening to the Russians and they're showing that on the scale because usually the West, especially Europe, will hide these types of interdictions. But let me tell you this when these interdictions now are this publicized, when these interdictions are now this publicized, let me tell you, you're going to have war on the horizon. Because now understand they're getting desperate. We can't buy Russian oil. So what we'll start to do is we'll start to detain all of the ships. And now we're just going to steal the oil. Now this is piracy. You can't make this up. This is now state sponsored piracy. Now you understand when you're dealing with state sponsored piracy. I want to give you all a quiz. How many wars have the United States fought that based off of piracy? Give me answers. One, two, three. How many wars? Yeah, many can be defined. That's correct. You do have a Coast Guard that now they're doing them. The U.S. has been fighting piracy and having wars on piracy really since it existed. One of the most famous to note, especially in this case, especially coming off of what we just saw North Africa, southern Iberia, Spain, that southern Iberian Peninsula. One war that comes to mind was the Barbary Coast. Yep, thank you. Thank you, Maserati. The Barbary Coast with Lieutenant O'Bannon. He's a Marine Corps lieutenant. And the Battle of Tripoli. Because Tripoli is now located I think it's in Tunisia, if I'm not mistaken. And what was going on was that they were basically terrorizing the European nations because they were not able to really have a route that would really go over to Egypt and then have access to the Nile and the Sub-Saharan. So, of course, history will skew um, the reasons why that happened. That will be skewed. But when you understand the dynamics of you had a because at that time it was still under a sultanate. It was still part of the Ottoman Empire. But the Ottoman Empire will say that that war was different. It wasn't really piracy. It was because they were enforcing an embargo because the West, basically Europe and the United States, wanted to be able to have a colony on the eastern Mediterranean or the Mediterranean coast, and really specifically the eastern Mediterranean coast. And now you cue that on up. What ended up happening about 150, 160 years later? Yes, they plan for generations. Got to take down the Ottoman Empire so then you can establish what? A beachhead, a nation that serves as a beachhead. Don't get it twisted. Imperialism is has always been here. We just never wanted to address what imperialism looked like because they don't want to say it's imperialism. And if you don't say imperialism, then we don't say imperialism. Because why? Because that's our conditioning. We have been socially conditioned. This is our social conditioning. And then when you actually see what it is, what that is, and then you understand the historical context of it, and you understand why that was needed. Don't think that the US was just doing that, the Battle of Tripoli and everything else, all because it was altruistic and wanted to ensure global this or global that. No, to be quite honest, at that time in the 1790s, after the US Revolution, guess what? Understand the US was still paying off some nations. They were still paying off some war debts. Yeah, they may have been purchasing some land, but they were still paying off some war debts. Do you understand the prosperity of the United States has always been in an indebted construct? Even the labor of our ancestors, is still an indebtedness that they still owe. Everything in here is a debt based system. So, in order for you to not call on the debt that is legally owed to you, guess what? They got to take away your rights. And then they have to say, well, everybody, right? We're all here. We're all one and the same. So, guess what that means? That means I ain't got to pay you because we're all one and the same. Wait a second. Hold up. That's not how this word works. But we're a Christian nation. Okay, well, then let's go to these scriptures. And they hate that argument. They hate it, man. They hate James chapter 5 and 3. I told you they hate it. And the easiest thing that when you are in debt, then guess what you want to do? You want to get others in debt with you. Hey, you can't get all of us. We're all in this together. We're all here together. You think you're going to come against me? No. Well, I brought a couple more friends with me. How are you going to get that debt serviced? How are you going to get those quadrillions of dollars? And I would say that right now, when you're seeing these things happening, guess what? This is all preparation of the battlefield. This is all an operational preparation. It's all an intelligence preparation. This is now a wartime footing because these are the roads to war. Yeah, yeah, 5,000 trillion. Yeah, I saw that. Now they actually are now putting a number on it to AI. That's right, brother T. AI. $5,000 trillion, meaning that they will never, ever, ever, ever be able to pay up. They are so indebted. That's the number. They would be paying back. What's the definition of forever? Someone define forever. 5,780,342 years later. Forever, ever, forever, ever. Yes, forever. But honestly, that's how that was because, to be honest, when you look at the reversal of their fortunes, in order to have their fortunes to begin with, they had to have some sort of a debt based system based off of an economic model of diminishing. And that diminishing is then via subjugation. And that subjugation was then via all of these different constructs. Well, you can't do that because look, legally, this is legal and that's legal and that's legal. And then when you look at their own Admiralty maritime law that they didn't even want to abide by in rendering aid of a fellow seafarer, now you understand. That's why folks are turning their back on the West. And when you have folks turning their back on the West, then you have things like this happen. Let me share this. December 20th. Party City is going out of business after 40 years, closing down all its stores. Corporate employees were told today this is their last day of employment. So you'll have the memes of Party City closing, you'll have all of these things. And that's not just Party City. Let me go ahead and show you this. From Wall Street Apes. Oh, I'm not really caring about the political, but I'm going to show this. It's written here major stores closing as of December 2024. Party City closing all 850 locations by February. Big Lots closing all 900 plus locations. Advanced Auto Parts closing over 700 locations in 2025. Macy's closing 65 locations right after Christmas. Denny's closing 50 locations by the end of the year. Sears just closed one of their final stores. Walgreens set to close hundreds of stores in the upcoming months. Sam Goody closing their final two locations. I didn't even realize they still had Sam Goody's, but okay. Foot Locker set to close hundreds of stores in 2025. Family Dollar plans to close 350 plus locations throughout 2025. GameStop has mass closures planned in 2025. I thought they were good, what, 4 or 5 years ago? I mean, they even had a Netflix special. Okay. CVS has already been hit hard by hundreds of more stores set to close. Rite Aid planning 850 store closures through 2025. J.C. Penney has more closures planned. Many more huge stores also set to close. Now for the video. I'll just shut the music down because they love to hit that music. So it's just showing what I had just read. So these are all the stores that have been hit and have been affected. All right. Shalom, brother Fast Nickel. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, shalom.
Brother Fast Nickel, I'm glad that you came on up because brother, this is your alley. Here is this. $5,000 trillion, basically $5 quadrillion.
That's
How
a lot of
does
money.
that happen? How do you then act or try to react? Because to me, I don't think you can unless you have some sort of digital based system.
Well, let's see. I'm looking at what you because I'm just now coming on board. So J.C. Penney may also close. So they're just all of these stores are just closing at the moment, but no bankruptcy, correct?
Oh, wait a second. No, not yet. Well, some of them, yeah, so they're closing, and it's crazy because what ends up happening is a lot of these stores they're closing here in the United States. Let me explain that. They're closing here in the United States. Just recently, my son had gone overseas, and he came back and he said, "Dad, I saw Toys R Us." He said, I almost cried. I said, I remember, Christmases and everything else. And, it brings up, it really does bring up a nostalgia when you do see a store that had been closed, years earlier, and you see it in another country. You just can't help it. You just
Right.
can't help to have that nostalgia. And when my son saw that recently on his trip to Japan, he said, "Dad," he said, "it really did make me feel a certain kind of way." And yeah, I don't think that they went out of, or I don't think that they went out of business. I just think that they closed their stores here in the United States because it wasn't very profitable.
Right. I mean, these are some big numbers.
I'm sorry, brother Fast Nickel, but I'm telling you, to me, this looks as though we're falling into a third world country status.
That is the plan. I've told people maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago that the whole plan was to make the U.S. a third world country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you live your whole life, like even me, who's lived your whole life in the United States, when someone tells you these kind of things, it sounds preposterous.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. It's only people who come here from other countries who get it because they've had to live through it.
Yes. They've lived through this. And I'm telling you, you know, when they try to say that this economy is great, it is not. It's a lie. So think about it. These stores are closing. That means that the consumer is not spending the money. That means that the economy has grounded to a halt. And if the economy grounds to a halt like that, guess what? That means that there's no forecasting that anything is coming into the economy. Because now everybody, when economies shut down, then what do people do? I'm going to fire you, and I'm going to save my money, and I'm going to go elsewhere. That elsewhere is usually outside of the United States. They said that they've had more people leaving the United States ever, getting their passports, and they're leaving. They're not coming back. I wonder why. Those are the people that can afford to leave. All right, we did what we need to do. Time to take, get everything going and go from there. And now they're literally getting managed into bankruptcy. Bankruptcy of the United States is literally being managed in front of our eyes.
Well, one thing about what we're seeing, I'm going to use the company that I work for as an example. We don't have a physical brick and mortar. It's all an online presence.
Mm-hmm.
So it can seem alarming when you see these stores closing that have had traditional brick and mortars, but maybe they're just seeing that more and more of their business is through online, so they don't have to have physical brick and mortars.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that is the case. However, when you're Party City, when you're Big Lots, when you're Advanced Auto Parts, when you're Macy's, those are things that you actually have to pick up.
Yeah, and a Denny's.
And a Denny's, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Those
No,
are
I
things,
get it.
yeah. Now the question then is, in my mind, as a macro economist, which I do pretend myself as that, a macro economist. My question is then, what does that say when that starts to bubble up to the top? Because what that shows, all of this shows, is that your consumables are no longer going to be there. Now, yes, will Party City and Big Lots and Advanced Auto Parts, to me, that will be consumed by your Amazon. I think just about anything you see there from those big three can be ordered via Amazon.
Correct.
I'm pretty sure you can even order the helium tank so you can still have your birthday parties. You know what I'm saying? So
even when you look at Advanced Auto Parts, like for instance, me, I go to Advance or AutoZone when I need to have something like instantly.
Mm-hmm.
But when I know I'm having some work done to my car and my mechanic is going to do it, I always usually go online to buy the parts because I can get it cheaper online.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And someone said, Margarita said, well, if the economy is, or if the currency is dead and worthless, why would a company do business here? And I would argue that the company is doing business here because the company has not yet pulled out. It's not that the company is going to do business. You're not going to do business in a place that's dying forever. What you're going to do is you're going to then incorporate that company into another country.
Yeah, well, you know, this is just a snapshot of what it says going on for December. But if you start to see some of these companies do bankruptcy, now, years ago when I would hear the term bankruptcy, I used to think, oh, that means that they're broke. But I realize now that bankruptcy is not always a bad thing. A lot of times
Hmm.
they have too much debt and they just need to restructure.
Hmm.
So, when you start to see these companies uh, file for bankruptcy, to your point, maybe it's they're reorganizing to shift overseas.
Yes. Yes. And that's exactly what Toys R Us did.
Yeah.
Toys R Us is no longer here in the United States, but they do have places in Asia. That's definitely the case. I saw, and when my son said he saw the Toys R Us, I said, I know. I saw Toys R Us when I was in Qatar back in 2018, 2019.
Yeah, because people, we when we hear that America is no longer I forgot the word. Basically, they don't manufacture any of the products here in America because it's the dollar's too strong,
Mm-hmm.
and that was all intentional. That was by
Mm-hmm.
design. I mean, what people have to understand when you start to see a country collapse like America is, it was 50 years in the making. Like they didn't just come to the decision yesterday to do this. Like you can, like if you're paying attention, you can go back 10, 20, 30 years and see where they started to drop the breadcrumbs.
Well, I'm glad that you said that. A country in collapse, because once you understand when a country is in collapse, right? It doesn't make sense if you know that your country is the main one that is offshoring jobs, the main one that's outsourcing jobs, and then you're gonna what? Tax the products that have been, outsourced. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Offshored and outsourced. You're gonna tax the when the company that is the one that's doing that is located here in the United States. It just makes no sense unless that is the reality of it is, well, now that that company's off and it is doing what it needs to do, and the entity is now, over in country whatever, okay, that then is an entity that can stay for whatever remaining time frame. Because the last thing that will go here in the United States, I'm telling you, the last thing that will go here in the United States are going to be your financials. And when your financials go, it is going to go because of war. Banks don't do well when they are under warfare. And I wouldn't say just warfare, I'm talking about actual warfare, because economic warfare will then have that bank then go and roll up into its parent bank, and then those parent subsidiaries, corporations, those umbrellas. Oh, trust and believe they have international arms. And guess what they will do? Every single bank here in the United States has an international arm. And they'll roll it up and they'll send it on over to either Europe or Asia. So if you
Yeah.
work at a bank, you're going to be okay for at least another, I would say, 2 or 3 years. In my mind, 2 or 3 years. If you work in an insurance company, oh, those are the first ones to get rolled up.
Well, when you mention bank, the ones that could, I mean, maybe in trouble would be maybe more credit union because those are kind of local banks.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Credit unions, that's what they're doing right now. So I would say we'll probably see they did the little stress test, and I had an article about that there were banks that were suing the Federal Reserve because of the stress test result.
Hmm.
And when you have those stress test results, sorry, family. Let me get that article. This is news. This is more than, yeah. There's a couple articles. I'll start here, Wall Street Journal, and I'll share this with you all. Because let me show you, this is all economic warfare. Let me break this on down for you all. Share this tab. This is Wall Street Journal. Banks sue Federal Reserve over lack of transparency in stress testing. The Fed on Monday said it planned to overhaul the process. And I gave you that, but you had to have a subscription. So let me go into here. This is Reuters. I'll make sure I'm not a robot. Come on now. Come on now. Stop. You understand like why they don't even want you to see these articles anymore. This is crazy. Maybe I am a robot. Maybe I am an automaton. Maybe I'm just too demanding. Want my circuits processed quick.
Well, that article says big banks.
Yeah, big banks, business groups sue. They sue U.S. Fed over annual stress test. Let me go ahead. Let's see. Let me put this in the chat for you all. And let me get on back here. So this is as of December 24th. This is this week. Major banks and business groups sued the Federal Reserve on Tuesday, alleging the U.S. Central Bank's annual stress tests of Wall Street firms violate the law. The lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court in Columbus, Ohio, claims the Fed's practice of determining how big banks perform against hypothetical economic turmoil and assigning capital requirements accordingly do not follow proper administrative procedure. Plaintiffs include the Bank Policy Institute, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and the American Bank Association. So those are the roll-ups of all the banks. The bankers are here. Let me explain it to you. The bankers don't want to be criticized.
Never.
Because what that means is that when they do the stress test, that means how much money do they actually have in the bank? that then they can do FDIC and then they can do this and they can do that. If things start to collapse, how liquid is the money? Will you be able to get your money, or will you only be able to get pennies on the dollar, or will you just be stuck with nothing? And that's why, it's I have to ask that question, because this is now what you're seeing. Here we go. The lawsuit marks the example of, or the latest example of, the banking industry growing bolder and challenging in court their regulators' powers, particularly in the wake of recent Supreme Court rulings placing fresh restrictions on administrative authority. In June, the Supreme Court dealt a major blow to such power by overturning a 1984 precedent that granted deference to government agencies in interpreting laws they administer. The so-called Chevron doctrine had called the judges to defer to reasonable federal interpretations of U.S. laws deemed to be ambiguous. So now what they are doing is they're now looking at the policies, and they're now coming through and they're saying, we need to see the books. Because understand, the Federal Reserve is different than the United States. It's all under the United States, but it technically is a corporation. You saw when Trump and Jerome Powell were getting into a heated discussion about Jerome Powell's authority, and he basically said, Trump can't do that. It's against the law. You can't remove me. Good luck trying. Remember, that was 2 weeks ago. So now here we go, and these corporations, these banks, because what's the first thing that's going to end up happening? Well, when you don't have people working, then guess what? You don't have deposits. And when you don't have deposits, you don't have any type of money-making ventures in the bank. Banks get paid money on these trillions of transactions a day. Not billions. We're talking trillions of banking transactions a day.
Well, you remember Rand Paul, Bernie Sanders, and other reps have been calling to audit the Fed.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, it's called Federal Reserve, but there's nothing, as everybody say, there's nothing federal about them.
Mm-hmm. And I don't care where you take your money. You can take it to a credit union. You can take it to a national, regional bank. It doesn't matter. This is why you have the funds rate and everything else getting cut, because banks are trying to work within themselves to loan to other banks at cheaper rates. And it's still not doing anything for the consumer. Because this is what happens in an economic warfare. Right? Robbing Peter to pay Paul. Let me move this here, to move that there, to move that there, to move this here. This is what's happening. Because they don't want to tell you that, simply put, let me get this on out here. Let me get this. Simply put, oh, okay, come on. Sorry, I'm in the background here trying to. This is what economic empowerment looks like. From the video we saw earlier, Clash report Burkina Faso's Military received a significant shipment of military equipment from China, including 50 CSVP 14 MRAP vehicles, 30 VN 22 6x6 armored personnel carriers, 10 CSVN 9 6x6 armored personnel carriers, 90 Shackman H3000 6x4 trucks, and 45 Shackman H3000S 6x4 tractor trailers. This is economic warfare. Because why? Because they are now controlling their resources. Because let me tell you this, this is where the money is going. This is where the future is going. These children don't even realize the amount of wealth that's being captured for them so they'll be able to innovate and accelerate their economic standing, their economic position. Because when you are healthy, when you are vibrant, when you are able to think, when you are able to move, when you are able to have something peaceful, then you are able to create. When you have security, you are able to create. You can't create and innovate being constantly harassed. You can't create and innovate being under a economic and financial thumb. You cannot create and innovate being subjected to the realities of harsh financial conditions. When you are allowing a generation to grow, those are the children that will have children and their children's children that will then say, this is when the generation started of when we were able to control our wealth. I don't know if you understand this. I'm just trying to make sure y'all realize this. I listen, I know y'all get it. Hallelujah. But this is a big deal. I did think that this photo was iconic too. Yes, Cynthia. I did think that this photo was iconic. All the things that are going on here in the United States, in Europe, and all around the world is because, quite simply, this country's taking its wealth back. And it's not the country, it's actually the region. And I would say it's not the region, it's actually the continent. Because you don't think that the folks on the continent are seeing this? Absolutely, they're seeing this. And if you don't have a medium of exchange that's actually worth something, then what are you going to have to trade? Brother Fast Nickel, what does cryptocurrency ultimately means? Does cryptocurrency mean something global, or is it really a regional?
I mean, it's global, it's regional. It's I mean, it kind of both. But to me, for me, cryptocurrency is a way for financial freedom.
For it's a way for financial freedom.
Well, I
For
say financial freedom, but let me rephrase that because we're never free. We're never
yeah,
truly free. It's just a way for me to. I don't know if I want to say get out of debt because the truth is, once this with everything collapsing, your debt may not even matter. But if anything, it allows you to buy assets.
to buy assets, but where? You see what I'm saying? If you are buying assets, and this is the question that I always like to pose to people. Your asset and means of goods and means of exchange is only based off of what? Good faith.
Well, that's what the dollar is based off of. Some part of it is off of good faith
Full faith and credit of the what? Of the United States
of the
financial
system.
system.
Right.
And you know what? And you could say that's what crypto is all about too. That's remember, Sam Bankman or Bankman Fried or whatever, the one that, tried to have his own little hack in there to steal billions of dollars.
Yeah,
I
but
would
Sam Bankman-Fried, there's so much more to that because his parents, like they were tied to Gary Gensler. I mean, they were tied to the Democratic Party. I mean, there's a lot to that than just what you see on the surface with Sam Bankman-Fried. And you know what's funny? He's no longer a part, but his token, the FTX token, is still doing well, and
hmm
it's crazy.
So then I would say this. Then the argument that I would always ask is this: would that token, and that's the development. I'm going to say the development of any type of U.S. based token. I'm not saying that cryptocurrency is bad. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that cryptocurrency isn't needed. It's going to be needed because they're going to have that via, Bricks Clear, and Mbridge, the Bricks Mbridge. So it is going to be a digital, ledger transaction system. But I would argue that anything that you have here in the United States, anything that is tied to that US dollar, in the next literally weeks or months. That's what I say. That's me. After giving you those articles, that's me.
Well, outside of those articles, when you look at Brother Yakova and another place that I looked at, we're talking about the Deagle report. We know that this year coming up, not just in the U.S. but throughout the world, they are looking to decrease numbers. How they now, A, how they do it, we don't know. But B,
Um,
are they on target for 2025?
here's something that's fantastic or that's amazing because I used to have that saved, and then they've altered the Deagle report so many times since it was, originally published in 2020. That was one of the things I first used to talk about on this channel. But let me tell you something that was very fascinating from that Deagle report. I don't have it here. You all will be able um to look for that. I don't remember if I still have the website.
Well, you asked earlier about what is crypto backed by, and two things. For one, many cryptos, and I'm putting Bitcoin aside, but many cryptos are use case, and they provide a service, but the plan is also to have these things backed by resources, because remember, the current fiat system is collapsing before our eyes, and that's not just happening here in the US, it's happening worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So when they go to this new system, they can't go to a new system that's no different than the current system,
Mm-hmm.
because then uh, they really haven't done anything. So the talk has been resources. There have been articles that I have read that talk about XRP being backed by gold, XLM being backed by silver, Quant being backed by diamond.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how valid that is, but the talk and the discussions are in place. But not just that, I've heard, they're going to use oil. They're going to because every country has their own different natural resources. So every country doesn't have necessarily the gold, silver, and diamonds like, say, African countries have, but they have different resources. It could be the wheat, the rice, whatever, but they are going to have everything um, backed by some type of resources.
Yeah, it'll be some source of a resource exchange. However, even in that resource exchange, that's still going to be finite.
Well, that's why. Well, that's why they're tokenizing everything, because everything is going to has VAT. They, they're always looking for a yield on their money, and they're always looking for gain. It doesn't matter how much a company makes. They always want more. They're just greedy. They always want
Mm-hmm.
more, and you're always going to eventually hit a ceiling where you can't go past. But then it's kind of like working out. You hit that ceiling, then you have to do something to break that ceiling, and they're always looking to do that.
And yeah, and I would also argue that, as they are getting to that ceiling, the countries that are, really outside of the continent, those ones, they're in trouble.
Correct.
They're going to be the ones, they're in trouble. And I kind of have to laugh because, with them being in trouble, yes, that is the use case. And anytime you have a use case per se, that use case is then going to then transform. Every use case transforms. Now we're here in a time to where you're right. Instead of now you have physical gold, you're now going to have digital gold. You have physical silver, you're going to have digital silver. But at the end of the day, if you ain't got no electricity, you ain't got nothing. I mean, that's it.
Well, yeah, that's a question that people always ask me about wallets and crypto. I mean, everything digital, it doesn't matter if you have no electricity.
Hmm.
But even if you don't have any electricity, I mean, I don't see that being long standing, because
Well, I think you do because you still have to have some sort of servers. This all does take servers to be able to have a centralized ledger account. So when people say it doesn't matter, no, electricity does matter because you need to have those servers to be up and running. Because if you don't have the servers, then your transaction time would be slow. And then, then folks will ultimately be like, and I don't forget that. Let's weigh the silver out. Let's weigh this gold out. If those folks even have access to it. If not, then they'll just have to barter or barter. So yeah, it's I look at everything. I just try to get a clear picture on everything. Not to say that I think to me, I think that crypto is going to be the thing on the continent, but that crypto environment is going to be something very, very different. It won't be the same environment that you would have here in the United States or in Europe. That's just my personal opinion. Now, would they be able to have some sort of a tunnel into there? Possibly, possibly. But I think once the dust settles, everything is said and done, and then treaties are signed. Because I look at it like this, as I was referencing the Deagle report. Um, there's a huge reduction in the West in terms of populations, in terms of even Asian countries. But you want to know who actually increases? That takes dramatic increases. The continent that has a dramatic increase of its population, Africa. Africa.
Well, the one thing that you mentioned about the power, people ask, you're not the first person that I've heard ask the question about what if the power goes out. Well, we once we go 100% digital, the powers that shouldn't be, they already have plans. I see somebody in the chat mentioned solar powered, and whether it be solar powered, generators, whatever. I mean, they're never going to let the system go down for any long lengths of time because they this is their system.
Hmm. Yeah, and even though it's their system, understand they'll centralize power.
That could be true too.
They'll centralize it, and you'll have those that are in power to have access to power, and those that won't have access to power. And unfortunately, when people talk about the crypto, and I look at this in terms of crypto and how things are moving, the reason that you will have a sudden change in population, well, number one, that's always, always, always a change in the global understanding and authority of whatever that dollar is going to look like, or not just dollar, but the global reserve currency. On top of that, this global reserve currency is also going to be a decentralized reserve currency. So, in order to have a decentralized reserve currency, then you're going to have a war. That's how that goes.
They always have a war.
You always have a war. Yep. Yep. So then so then you have a war, then what happens then to that currency that was the global reserve currency? Because it happened to the Dutch, it happened to the Spanish, and it happened to the English. And now we're seeing it getting ready to happen
To the
to the
dollar.
United States, the US dollar. And that is why they are losing their minds over BRICS. BRICS is a bane to them.
The fiat system that Kissinger and Nixon put in place uh, after 72 was only supposed to last maybe 50 years. We've already gone a little past the breaking point. So it's it's not going to last much longer. I mean, again, 2025 is the year that on an international level, the banks are switching over. March 10th, here in the US, the banks have said that they're switching over on that date. When the switch happens, it may mean nothing to us. It's not necessarily the case where that date comes and you see something happen. No, everything happens behind the scenes. But I know that you're not the biggest crypto fan. Do you have any crypto?
I have some crypto,
Okay.
but I here's the thing. I understand crypto. I'm actually a fan of crypto because I actually understand the implications of it as an alternative economic financial system or alternative financial system. And but I'm going to tell you this, just truthfully, I'm not a fan of any type of European derived or Western based digital currency because I do understand that anything, so you can get invited to the party as the use case, but then it's like, okay, well, now everybody's switching over, from the uh from the BlackBerry and Palm Pilot, and now you got to go to Android and Apple. You got to go to iOS and Android.
Brother Karras, hold that thought. We just want to say to everyone, this is not financial advice.
And it's not financial. Exactly. It's not financial advice. Yeah.
This is all
Please.
educational.
This is all educational purposes, not financial advice. Now, when you see that when they talk about CBDC, well, think about what CBDC is. To me, CBDC and why they're doing CBDC, especially at that time, I look at it like this. If you're doing CBDC, especially at that time, that means that there is a war element that's taking place. There's a warfare element taking place. To me, no, CBDC isn't like, oh, yay, that's great. No, CBDC is an easier, hey, we're just going to digitize this economy and we're going to give you all UBI and we're not going to call you UBI. We're just going to say, hey, these are some sort of government subsidies and things of that nature. How? Wow. How am I getting an extra, $500-$600, every week? How am I getting this every week? It's going to sound good. It's going to feel good. It's going to look good while folks are actually actively fighting. Hey, don't worry about this war. Just man, enjoy this kickback. Enjoy this kickback, this digital dollar system. Oh wow, wow. Do I need to pay this back? No, no, no. Just just do what you need to do. Continue on in there. Because at the end of the day, when the dollar is no longer being recouped, which is why the digital dollar, the CBDC, because everybody that thought that they were holding cash, well, we have to recoup all the cash. And if the cash isn't being recouped by this time, then your cash is now worthless. You can't bring it to a bank. We're not going to honor it. All those, homes that had all sorts of dollars sitting up there for years, for decades. Everybody that had stuff stuffed in their couch. Oh, rainy day. Okay. All the forgotten dollars of, being stuffed up in folks' homes. Yeah, they have that here in Florida. Absolutely, they do.
Well, last night I uploaded my video to my channel, and I've never done a video as long as yesterday's. It was almost an hour where I really do a deep dive. And the bottom line is the Bank of International Settlements, which is the bank of all banks,
Mm-hmm.
is 100% behind CBDCs.
Mm-hmm.
And their plan is to tokenize everything because they want to put value on everything. So now they can take the Empire State Building that a company owns or New York State owns, and now they can sell a digital version of it. So now you someone owns the physical building, but now people own digital equivalents of the building as
Mm-hmm.
NFTs, or they tokenize it. But the bottom line is it's happening, whether we like it or not. So if it's going to happen, You just want to be able to try to see what they're doing to protect yourself so that you can stay out of harm's way as long as possible.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, brother Fastnickel, because I look at it like this. At the end of the day, the relationship on the continent is really the value. Now, will you have value in crypto? Yeah, absolutely. You'll have value in crypto. I'm not taking that away. But I think to me, you'll have more value in the relationship on the continent, because then on the continent, guess what? Then folks will be able to have access to gold. And then, hey, listen, what do you have? Well, I just have this tokenization. Okay. I was doing something the other day. I was working on a little project of mine that I had working the other day. These are the things that I do. I do work on a lot of projects. So one of the projects, I actually created my own digitization API. That's all it was. It just was a digitization API. But then what I was trying to do with the digitization API was that the digitization of the mineral and then of the value of dollars of that mineral.
Okay.
Now, the concept is it works, but then you also, yeah, you have to go through BIS, you got to go through Swift and everything else, potentially speaking. Now, there are ways to get around that, because I was thinking about that. Now, um, trust me, the ways to get around that, it's going to cost about $30 million. If anybody has $30 million laying around, we can get that thing taken care of in about 3 years. That's how that works.
When you say to get around what?
To be able to have it, because you have to have it in different nodes. There's physical pieces to that, because the tokenization is a script of a translation. That's all that is. It's a translatory or translation piece. Transitory piece, yeah, translation. It's transitory. So yeah, in doing so, yeah, I have a lot of I'm a big ideas guy, and I can make those ideas work, but it's going to take millions of dollars, and that's the same thing that they have with BlackRock.
Well, I don't know if you realize this or not, but you mentioned that you have a little bit of crypto,
Hmm.
and now you're mentioning about this concept that you're talking about, which is really on the lines of what they're doing with crypto. So
Yes.
it's so I'm bringing that up to say, when people listen to you, we get the impression that you're anti CBDC, you're anti crypto, you're anti all of this, but at the same time, it sounds like you're not. But at least that's the impression you give.
No, exactly. I am not anti crypto. I told you I'm not anti crypto. I'm anti crypto in this system because what happens when the thing goes down, and what happens when they just want to pull the plug? You see what I'm saying? Your digital wallet is controlled by it's a centralized authority. That's why they want to do CBDC. That's why they want to have, the real IDs and things of that nature, which is then real authentication of your person.
Yeah, but that's the people, to answer your question, those are the people who have gone off the grid and live in the woods.
Well, yeah, and I understand, and trust me, I understand that. This, what I was looking at is, it's not to live in the woods, but this is to have an exchange with our brothers and sisters on the continent, into an actual fungible ledger of minerals that then you would actually have, which is digital ledger tokenization or transactions in a special economic vehicle.
Well,
There's a lot to this. There's a lot. There would be literally about a 2-hour discussion for me to even get through these particulars. These
yeah,
particulars.
I mean, between now and 2030, a lot is going to happen. That's why you want to be diversified, because we don't really know. We have a thought that we know what's going to happen, but we don't truly know. So you want to
Hmm.
prepare, you want to be prepared for every scenario. But at the end of the day, I can't eat gold. I can't eat crypto. I got I want to be able to grow my own food.
Yes, and that was one of the reasons. That was the reasons I was looking into that, was to be able to see how that would then be translated for goods and services, because understand, goods and services are going to diminish. Grocery stores are going to diminish. Clothing items and even resources, textiles, they're going to diminish. However, we are literally placed in a very unique position to capitalize on that. So once we are able to see that and we're able to capitalize, because there's systems in play that then we can have an economy. We dealt with alternative economies. Our people here in the United States, we were literally the originals in alternative economies. Don't believe it? Well, there's remnants of towns that are underwater, as Jacoba was saying, burned down, buried, bulldozed. Those were the remnants, because we then knew how to circulate the funds within ourselves. And that's the biggest thing. You still would have access to dollars, but then you would have access to other fungible items. That's the scary thing.
Hmm.
Can it be done? Absolutely, it can be done. How much does it cost? There's always a cost. There's always a cost, but it can be done. And you have to understand, because the more that you have, the more you can, you can have a bank up and, overnight, literally. You can have it overnight, depending on how much you have in a bank. You could do it through this, and I've researched all this. Yeah, you can do that very, very quickly. The state of Florida makes concessions for it. The SEC makes concessions for it. The
Yeah, I have
FTC.
a buddy down in South Florida, down in Fort Lauderdale. He's been talking about a bank, creating a bank. And to your point, it's not. I don't want to say it's hard, but I'm going to say it's not as hard as you think.
It's not. It's not. If you understand, the mechanics behind it, and if you understand the types of banks that you can have, especially non-deposit holding banks of that nature.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I do, family. That's what I research, because I'm praying that the Most High will allow for that to open up. Because let me tell you, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to be living in some very interesting times here by the end of next week. For real, for real. And you all know they want to get this stuff kicked off as soon as possible, and we know who they are. But brother Fast Nickel, any final comments? I'm gonna shut this on down.
My only comment is, if anybody hasn't seen my latest video, go to my YouTube, Fast Nickel. 1965. Hopefully, it'll be insightful, it'll be informative, and you will learn from it. But thank you for your time, Brother Karras. It's always great talking and exchanging ideas.
All right. Thank you, Brother Fast Nickel. All right. Shalom.
Shalom.
All right. Well, family, thank you for this conversation. I pray that it was insightful. I pray that you learned something from it. Don't be discouraged because the Most High always gives us a way to move forward. But I do want you all to be prepared as we move forward. And with that said, family, with Q2A discussions, as we are ramping up the end of the year, you can provide your support by providing a 501c3 tax deductible gift that is certainly appreciated to help with the development and the sustainment of the work for critical infrastructure and economic development by helping to shape and mold the leaders for tomorrow. So with that said, family, shalom, salama, and y'all have a blessed and awesome day. Shalom, family.